everyone, and welcome back to your weekly PlayStation podcast, Talking the PS, where we round up all of the gaming and PlayStation news for your listening or viewing pleasure right here on youtube.com/Helix Plays Games, and also available up there in the digital clouds on your podcast preference of choice. You're joining myself, Chris, alongside one of my co-hosts for this week, our chaotic neutral Rob. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's been a while.
It has been a while, and it's a good thing you're back because Richie isn't here, our man of many pixels. He's mentioned it, it's been going on. We sent him on an emissary mission to Montreal to meet up with the Ubisoft crew. He hasn't really, he's gone there with his own job, and he's going to spend some time enjoying his time in New York. I know he'll probably be listening to this on a long flight, so for the sake of this episode, he shall be known as Rick, because we know he loves us when we call him Rick. And that's Rick. Hope you're enjoying your time in New York, Richie, and don't forget to bring me back some Fanta Orange. Just gonna
True Fanta Orange.
Good, solid Fanta Orange from the States and or Canada. But we're not here to talk about geography. We're here to talk about PlayStation. And we do have a great show lined up for you all this week, talking about Final Fantasy XVI, the PS5 exclusives review roundup, and my first impressions. Metal Gear Solid, we have a date along with leaks for Volume 2, Elder Scrolls 6 potentially not coming to PlayStation 5, a new PS5 bundle, and a Ghost of Tsushima movie is underway. All that and much, much more. But before we do get into it all, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, ring that bell so you're kept in the loop with all of the great content we do on this channel. Just like this very show, just like XPass, our weekly Xbox podcast that goes up every Monday here on the channel. And all our live streams, Let's Plays, and more importantly, watch-alongs, because we reacted to tons of showcases across the summer, plenty of games, so much news to talk about, and we're going to get into it, Rob. So before we start, I haven't seen you for a while. I mean, I've seen you in person for a while, we've been out for drinks and whatnot, but we haven't seen you to talk about video games on camera for quite a while. So what have you been up to? You've been moving house, and what's the deal with your gaming time? Has it suffered because of the move?
Yeah, so anybody who's watching on video will see like I'm in a new setting. Obviously, like, moves take longer than you anticipate every single time you do them, so I have been away. I've snuck in lots of brief gaming sessions, I think. So since we last talked, which tells you how long it's been, I've rolled credits on Survivor.
Yes. Oh, that's one thing I wanted to talk about, yeah.
Yeah, right. So I've done that. I'm working on the kind of, what do they call it, the fractured
butthole
things. Like the challenges or whatever.
Oh, right, yeah, sorry, I thought you meant like a different game. I thought you meant the South Park game, completely separate.
Oh,
you're going through the actual Jedi Survivor, yeah, like the little portals you go through.
Yeah, where like you have to fight like a couple of Rancors or something like that. So I'm doing them, but the actual story is all done and dusted. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to talk about without spoilers because
it is very tough. I've been holding off because Richie hasn't played it yet, so every week I've been catching up with Richie and saying Jedi Survivor. I have the platinum in it now, so I'm finished with it. I'm done. And some of the fractured things were I found them quite irritating. There's some that you don't fight creatures. They have, for listeners and viewers, they have essentially like obstacle courses. But because they're Jedi obstacle courses, it's not just like jump here, jump there. It's a case of jump, dash through the air, use your force powers, pull something towards you, whilst there's an infinite abyss of space below you to die into. And there was some of them I had to just, I had to turn the console off and go to bed at that point. I was like, I'm not going to do this at 2 a.m. I'm going to try again with fresh eyes. I say fresh eyes, but try again when I can.
Speaking of annoyances in that game, the final boss fight, and again, no spoilers. Mm-hmm. Did you feel that like kind of broke a lot of the kind of conventions of the combat? Like,
yeah,
that was really annoying for me.
I found the end boss fight in particular to be quite underwhelming compared to some of the other fights that you have throughout the game. Yeah. Same with the kind of the plot and the way it rolls out. At the end, it was kind of like, okay, that's going to have repercussions, but we'll see. We'll see in no doubt the third game in the inevitable trilogy that EA pulled together. But overall, though, what were your thoughts on the whole story and game? As obviously a continuation of Fallen Order, which I always knew going into it there was a certain level I was going to get. I knew I was going to enjoy it just because it was more Fallen Order. That would have been a quite happy ending point.
Yeah, definitely.
What did you think of the stances and stuff in the end then, and the new worlds we explored?
I love the stances. I think the stances added so much to the game. Even if, I guess, canon-wise, they don't particularly make sense. Like the crossguard thing was like, how is a lightsaber heavier or whatever.
It's more light.
But yeah,
Physics.
so like I really love the gameplay. Like there's not much I could fault on the gameplay side of things. One thing I did notice is I upgraded my TV in between kind of starting the game and finishing the game, and I did notice a couple of not issues, but like a couple of drops when I was playing in 4K, which I wasn't before. Story-wise, it was super solid. I think there was some weak elements to it. Like the Talinar thing was like...
Yeah, I felt like they didn't know what they wanted to do with that in the end. Like they had it set up for something. I don't know whether they just ran out of time and they had to... Or for all we know, the film crews and Lucas and Catherine Kennedy were like, oh, you can't go too deep into that. We need that for future movies or shows for Disney Plus. So they're always hamstrung a little bit by, I think, those.
I think that's fair enough. But I will say, like, the set piece with the kind of big drill thing, I don't think that's a spoiler, is it?
Giant
like,
spider, robot.
Yeah, whatever it is. That set piece was phenomenal. Like,
yeah, that sequence was very... It was like, if you took Uncharted and applied it to Star Wars, that's definitely one of the standout moments for me in the whole game.
The best thing is I've seen a clip on, I think it was TikTok actually, someone put the Freebird solo.
All right, that's
it's just like, it fits so well.
I can imagine that, especially when it kicks off and you're all over the place. Yeah, I do appreciate that.
Yeah,
there was a lot of things I really enjoyed. I think the story in particular for me was the fact that we saw elements of Star Wars we've not seen yet. Like, as someone who's been a fan my entire life, to see something new. Like, we won't go into it, keep stressing that, but if you're going to play the games, I think we're on the cusp of movies, TV, and now games exploring an element of Star Wars we've never seen before. I think for fans of, like, the Old Republic games, nothing to do with that, but fans of that and the fans of maybe the old stuff that isn't canon anymore, like the books and the graphic novels, I think we are on that cusp where I think the Disney Plus shows have ran their course. We've got every character who we want to see more of. I think we've had and done now, and I think Ahsoka is going to be great, but it is still more of what we had from the Clone Wars. So I think going forward with Ubisoft's Star Wars Outlaws, which looks terrific, and then kind of rounding up Cal's journey in no doubt a few years, I think we're about to see some big changes for the Star Wars world. So exciting. Anything? I mean, when you mentioned performance issues, the game chugged like hell when you go anywhere near water. I did notice that. It's like whatever's happening, the game cannot process you moving and what like streams or rivers or creeks at the same time.
Which is a real shame because there's some like really beautiful kind of stream settings and like
you just can't enjoy them.
There. So I'm giving it a solid 8 out of 10. Like
I'd say that's
no
a fair
bad
score.
element to that game. There's things to improve. That's always.
It's definitely going to win the running for Game of the Year.
I'd agree. Yeah. The other game I've been consumed by, mainly because I just want to do my part and earn my citizenship, and that is Starship Troopers Extermination.
Oh yes.
Oh, what a game!
Is this out yet, or is it still in like early access beta?
It's an early access PC game at the moment, but it's so good. It's essentially just really faithful to the movies. You get dumped on a planet, you have to kill loads of bugs.
Standard.
Eventually you kind of have to build a base and defend it against a horde, kind of like the and then like kind of wait for the extraction to come, just like the movie. And when you've defended the base, like the drop ship comes like kind of a brief runaway, and you have to like kind of bug out and defend, and like the music plays, and it's just such a good game, and the community is really strong. Everyone just quotes Starship Troopers all the time.
Would you like to know more? Is it first person shooter?
First person shooter, which normally I'm not, super deep into, but they've just done really, really well with like kind of capturing the essence of the game. You have to unload like lots of shots into a bug to down it. They've got like the big grenadier bugs and things like that, and that's been taking up most of my time.
I think for most of us, when we saw that movie as kids, when it was probably way beyond our age restriction, it was one of them where you could immediately see how it should translate into a video game really well, and the fact that we've had to wait so long. Did you catch the Helldivers 2 trailer then from the showcase that was dropped?
I didn't actually.
So that when me and Richie watched along with it, Helldivers 1 was essentially Starship Troopers, but it was top down. You dropped in and it was kind of isometric. And it was bugs and creatures, and you'd kind of cleared out the area. You found like capture the flag or a science research facility or something, and you cleared it out. And you could drop in new people from your squad from the spaceship, and you died. It was 4-player co-op essentially, but it was because of that top down. Helldivers 2 coming to PlayStation exclusive. Definitely check out the trailer. It's gone third person. It literally looks like The Division meets Starship Troopers, and even the trailer for the advert, they did the proper cheesy news story addressing what's going on screen like a news report, and then they do everything except from say, would you like to know more? And then it shows like the Helldivers and all the bugs around them, all the different planets. So I think that's a game that we definitely need to get on the channel. It's a PlayStation exclusive coming later this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went straight into PlayStation Plus, because I think the first Helldivers did.
Yeah.
But that's definitely one for the future. In terms of what I've been playing, as I said, finished Jedi Survivor. I've been playing a couple of things on Xbox I spoke about yesterday, Planet of Lana and Back to Hi-Fi Rush. So I'll chat more about those yesterday. But in terms of PlayStation, our kind of first news story for the week is Final Fantasy 16. So many times on the show, Richie's told me, the people in the chat have told me, you need to play Final Fantasy. It's amazing. 7, we had and then we've got Rebirth on the horizon. I was always like, am I too late? And I think the number always puts you off, even though everyone tells you it's a new story and it's got nothing to do with the other ones. Seeing the number 16 or 15 or 14 at the end of a game,
it's massive, isn't it?
It's like asking me to watch. It's like people when they recommend a TV show and they go, "Oh, you should really watch it. It's the best TV I've ever seen." And you go, "Oh, okay, what's it on Netflix? How many seasons?" They go, 23. And you go, I do not have that capacity in my life for this one. However, as we've crept towards the launch of Final Fantasy 16, there's been a great crescendo where I finished Jedi Survivor. There's nothing really on my dock until Spider-Man 2. Which isn't coming till October. So there's a big window of this summer when I've got nothing essentially. I mean, I say nothing. I've got an entire back catalogue of games I could be playing. But you always want that new shiny thing to treat yourself to. So I did it. I got Final Fantasy 16. I played the demo, physical copy, yeah. I got the physical copy after playing the demo last week. So Richie did a first look on the channel. If you want to check that out, it's available now. About 2 hours, the demo. If you're unsure, I would definitely recommend check out the demo. It starts at the beginning of the game, so it's not like a vertical slice like 3-4 hours in. It basically introduces you to the world, a couple of characters, sets up the very, as I think Richie alluded to on last week's episode, the Game of Thrones world we're living, where it's like warring kingdoms and families. It's M-rated, so there is, I'd say it leans more into the Game of Thrones politics, where people are happy to stab each other back and betray each other. Where I feel like a traditional Final Fantasy game, it would be more fantasy and everyone gets along. The bad guys aren't really bad guys. These ones, they are. They're just absolute assholes and they will kill you if they need to, slit your throat, do what they need to do. So that impressed me straight away because it's not what I expected. The voice acting, superb so far, for me personally. And that basically made me get into thinking, I'm going to pre-order this. I'm going to get it locked in. I did approach it from a very interesting point, though, because going into it, I realised that the voice actors in it, so there's a young boy in the demo called Joshua, and I think Richie was alluded to it last week, where he's essentially called a dominant, where he's been imbued with these like amazing powers that every generation gets. I think all Final Fantasy has these icons or dominants, and they have the ability to turn into some giant freaking Digimon monster out of nowhere. And and he's like a fire dominant, and he's been imbued with like the powers of the Phoenix or something, and that's his kind of family. So every family in this Game of Thrones world has, like Baratheon has Stag and Lannister. Gotcha. It would be the equivalent of if Tyrion could suddenly turn into a giant fire lion, and Robert Baratheon would turn to a giant stag or something, and they would fight on such a crazy huge scale. Every other human just gets squashed along the way. That's the kind of scope of what I saw.
Is that how they work in? Because again, this is going to be something you perhaps don't appreciate because you haven't been in the series before. But there's like these recurring summons which are in other games, like the big kind of Bahamut dragon. I'm guessing that's how they work that into.
I'd imagine so, yeah. So it's quite a grounded world, but then every faction essentially has their hero. Their go-to is in every generation, a new one gets imbued with the powers of a dominant, and whether that's a fire phoenix or a giant titan or something else, that seemingly so far, I've only played a few hours, is what happens. I know Richie waxed lyrical last week about it, saying, there's these icons and this happening, and he got about 5 minutes in and my brain just went, this is why I don't play Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, but I guess this goes back to your point where it's such a deep series, and fair enough, like the new stories every time are like, but there's still like these like core elements that tie the series together, which
Chocobos was the only thing I knew of before. That was it.
Yeah, there's like chocobos. I think the ancients are part of them all, and then like as you were saying, like the summons, like what I know is the summons from like the older games. Yeah. So good first impressions.
Yeah, so the demo, as I said, sold me. But as soon as I started playing, I'd read somewhere that the young boy Joshua is voiced by the young boy who plays Hugo in Plague Tale series, and his voice acting is phenomenal in that. Him and the girl who played Amicia as well, they're both fantastic. So as soon as I learned about that, when I went into playing the game, he's almost playing the same character as Hugo. He's got this power. He can't control rats in this one, but he's got this power that he doesn't know what to do with. He's too young. He's got a brother who needs to protect him, which is your character, Clive. And I started playing, and in my mind, I'm like, this is just a continuation of Plague Tale, except for it's pivoted from rats to this phoenix power. And then his brother's there, me, to protect him, except for instead of just having a slingshot in Plague Tale, I've now got a sword and some powers of my own, and I'm a cool-looking badass called Clive. And once I got into it, and it was like castles and soldiers and that kind of stuff. The demo does really good to basically work as a tutorial, but pull you in to the world and the story. Where it finished the demo, and I was like, it literally took me a fraction of a second to pre-order it. That's how good it was. Like AAA production quality, acting was fantastic, and I do think finally, because it has pivoted a lot from the traditional Final Fantasy. It's not what I come to recognise it as. It was enough for me to go, you know what, I'm going to do it. And then all the reviews dropped as well, and it was like, well, actually, we'll get into the reviews before we start talking about it. Rob, in Richie's absence, I mean, you do this anyway traditionally, not in Richie's absence. Now you're back. Oh, yeah. Could you introduce us to the
properly prepared PlayStation Perusing Points, aka the news.
How does that feel saying that again after many weeks?
Slipping into a comfy pair of socks.
Yeah, comfy pair of socks. I didn't realise as well is you missed the anniversary. You did. You've done 52 episodes or 52 weeks was our. Man. You've done this show now for one whole year.
Wow.
So I know that it's in a blink of an eye how we've done because we do it every week non-stop. So the fact that when we got, I think Richie pointed out, he's like, 50 next week's a year. Like a whole year anniversary, and I was like, God, that's crazy when we started just episode 1. Been and gone now, and we're up to 54 already.
With a really ropey headset mic as well.
Time flies and tech evolves. But back to our story. Our news is brought to you, of course, by our wonderful Helix Heroes, the fantastic folks who support us that extra bit more, just like you can, from as little as 99 pence. Or less than $1, you can click join below on the channel and help support us. It really does go a long way. I know in our Discord this week, a couple of people in the podcast questions section have been asking about a merch store. It's something we've been working on for quite some time. I think Richie's been toiling away trying to get the best fit in the company, but I think because we don't have that much income to produce them and get a company to do them for you and the fees they take, we're trying to find that happy medium where it benefits everybody. I know we've done stickers as like giveaways in the past and stuff, but we do want like a world where we can get like t-shirts, hats, water bottles, mouse mats, all that, but we're still trying to find the best appropriate solution for that. And the YouTube partner programs, they don't make it easy, if I'm honest. So we'll keep working on that. I said when Richie's back, we'll have a sit down chat and decide what we want to do, or if we can, for that matter, do anything. So if you do know, let us know in the comments. Let us know on our Discord if you've got any kind of best friends who just happen to run a clothing business in Vietnam or something. We might take you up on that offer. But aside from that, Final Fantasy Best Story of the Week is their review roundup. Of course, this is a PlayStation 5, for all we know, timed exclusive. But so was 7 Remake, and I don't think Xbox is going to see that anytime soon. Part of me thinks when it was just one game and they signed the contracts, they went, yeah, cool, Xbox, you can get it in 1 year. And then when Square Enix decided to turn it into 3 games spanning a decade development cycle, PlayStation went, technically, does that mean they can't have it until the whole saga's been completed? And the lawyers went, yeah, kind of probably. And Xbox went, well, shit, we're not getting it until 2 more generations have passed.
I think especially the way things are now, it's
seemingly
much
that
less
way.
likely, isn't it?
Well, we got into that a lot yesterday. Pretty much all of XPass yesterday was about the FTC rulings and what Microsoft are dealing with this Activision Blizzard merger still. But we digress. Final Fantasy 16, it is a time PlayStation exclusive. I've always associated Final Fantasy with PlayStation anyway. I think just by proxy of its time on PS1 all the way through. Even though it was on NES, I believe back in the day with the pixel ones. I always associate it with PlayStation. I think because our friends growing up, like Richie and some other friends, like the PS1 when you had was it 4 discs, I think, on some of them, potentially, or 4 discs?
I think Final Fantasy 7 was 3 discs.
Yeah, so it's stuff like that. I think I've always associated to that, and no surprise then, they've got 16 for time exclusive, and I think after what happened with Forspoken, I'm not surprised that Square Enix maybe had this in the chamber. Part of my reasoning, I always thought Forspoken was one of those, as part of the deal with PlayStation, they said, if you want to take Final Fantasy 16 as exclusive, can you take this like fifth child we don't really have much love for and sell it as an exclusive, because we know it's not. Well. Yeah, we'll put it out in January when no one really wants to play the games and just see how it fares. And yeah, they've kind of been dragged along for the cause. But at the end of the day, if it means PlayStation has a top exclusive banking to sit on this summer, apparently that's where we're at. So reading through some of the reviews off the back of my initial first impressions, we've got Push Square giving it a 9 out of 10. And I quote, "At its best, Final Fantasy XVI is a jaw-dropping epic of rarely seen proportions. It's pretty much the pinnacle of cinematic spectacle in modern games, and it's often gripping, emotional stories only matched by its fantastic combat system, which is its overall quality does dip outside of the main plot. This is still a must-play action RPG and the best single-player Final Fantasy in over a decade."
That's very, very high praise. The pinnacle of cinematic gaming was that. That's
saying something.
Big mountain to climb.
IGN gave it a 9 out of 10, and they praised quite a lot the active time law feature, which they say is incredible and should be a standard for all story-driven games going forward. While the combat may not live up to the sky-high standards set by some of the best games in the character action genre, it's near the top of the heap. Pair all that with one of the best soundtracks of the year, incredible performances from the top to the bottom, and drop-dead gorgeous visuals, you've got a game worthy of an orchestral Final Fantasy victory fanfare. So I'm sure when Richie goes to the next Final Fantasy orchestra, this will form part of that. I have heard actually the main theme is the Final Fantasy theme used throughout. So even though I've never played games before, apparently there's like an orchestral beat that's common in all games. That's still here, so old school fans, you can rejoice. But in terms of what you mentioned in the IGN review, the active time law, so basically at any point in the game, Rob, you can hit the touchpad and it brings up almost like a mini character map of anything and anyone is going on. So, sometimes Season 1 Game of Thrones, you get a bit lost for who the hell's who and where they're at location-wise. The benefit of this in a game is when I'm watching a cutscene, I'll be in a location. When I have been confused, press that touchpad button and it comes up saying, he's the character, he's a brief snippet of where they're at in the story, what they're doing and who they are, and it evolves literally scene for scene. So in a cutscene you can do it, when you're wandering around the open world you can do it, and it tells you the location, what part of the timeline it's at, what factions were warring, who this enemy is, why they're relevant to your character, and it does it really smart where it doesn't give anything away to like break the story, so you're not getting kind of like a foresight into, oh, he belongs to this faction who we're not going to encounter for 5 hours. It keeps it very specific to the moment, so it's active time law, and I think it's been done in a few games before, but this one, from all the reviews I've seen, basically anytime you get lost in a story, this is here to kind of, it's your archive to say, this is going to fill the blanks. And I think because the game...
Like an active kind of, what's the word? Like glossary, like you get in some games.
Yeah, you early on in the game, you do meet a gentleman who is, his nickname is Torms, and he's in charge of all of the history of Valistia, I think it's called. And yeah, basically, as you go through the game, his archive fills up of information. He's the person you can go back to.
The key question is, do you think he got that nickname after he specialised in that, or do you think he chose that nickname to then, and then people are like, oh, well, obviously you should be the history guy.
He does have a ridiculously long name, I think, and I think they probably just shortened it to anything. They would have took anything at that point. But yeah, and I can only echo what I've played so far, and that is it does work really, really well to keep, I guess, your head screwed on with what the hell's going on, because I know as we get deeper into the game and we meet new people, even after I think I've played about 5 hours, I've met a lot of characters and I'm like, okay, some stand out very obviously, like, you're cool, your voice is badass. There's a gentleman called Sid, spelled C-I-D.
Sid's a common element as well.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. And he's voiced by, you'll remember him from Game of Thrones, the guy who convinces Theon to basically screw over Winterfell, the proper gruff northern guy.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, you bastard, get on the boat. Like that guy he seems like he's Theon's friend and he ends up just dicking him over.
Yeah.
He's Sid, and he's got that... It must be like a Sheffield accent, I think it is, like a proper gruff northern accent. and he's cocky as anything in it, and his bravado immediately like, okay, I'm going to get along with this guy.
And Sid was my favourite character in 7 as well.
Right. So that's it. That's an ongoing thing.
Yeah. But like that glossary thing is good for you because you're still kind of absorbing the what's the word, like the Final Fantasy style as well as the actual. You have a doubly hard job.
The like, JRPG of here is a lot of information that spans essentially decades now, putting it into what's going on today. There's a couple of other characters I've met so far. There's someone called Karen, spelt Sharon, so it's Charon, like the River Styx guy.
Okay, yeah.
She's your inventory person so far. And there's a young boy called Goots, who I'm guaranteed, I don't know who he's voiced by, but he sounds like he's from our neck of the woods. I've never heard an accent like his in the game, and I'm like, you sound like me and most of my friends. He's very much in there.
Accent,
yeah.
Like that's...
obviously, they have their Japanese counterparts, but they've came over and got these people. I did try to look up the young lad who's done it, and I think he does a lot of just like theatre in the UK, so I don't think he's like a well-known voice actor. But yeah, as soon as I heard him start talking, there's a couple of his inflections and such, and I'm like, you sound like you went to school down the road from me. And let us know in the comments anyone stand out for you. The main character is voiced by someone who was in Jamestown, which was in the UK it was like a Sky One show about going over to the US and forming essentially Jamestown back in the colonial times.
See, it's really good this because there was a period in time when the game voice acting community was very, very small, and you run that risk of kind of a lot of games sounding the same, right? And the characters sounding the same, especially kind of like, like Nolan North, like his kind of CV.
The fact this isn't just Nolan North, Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, it is a kind of a breath of fresh air in a different way. Few more just to round out then. Games Radar gave it a 4.5 out of 5, saying the design decision to make Final Fantasy XVI an action RPG will likely open the door to those with a passing interest in the series. However, accessories which can be equipped throughout ensure that players will have the opportunity to feel iconic, which is their big through thread, I think. In ditching turn-based combat for heavy combo melees, Final Fantasy XVI recaptures the spirit of reinvention that the series lends itself to. The new approach to action coalesces with the world you'll want to explore and an endearing story which is powerfully executed by its voice cast. Overall, it's an experience that stands out alongside the series' greats. So it's, again, everything I've read about this, it's like, okay, yeah, enjoy it, get in. So my biggest takeaway would be, if, like me, you've never played a game before, this is the perfect jumping on point. And I know people who are Final Fantasy fans say that, and you think, yeah, you just want me to get into this world so you can gush about the last 16, 17 entries. My only worry is if I enjoy this so much, the next game's going to have sweet FA to do with this one. But I do know they do like second follow-ups on this, so we might get a Final Fantasy 16-2, essentially, with their horrible naming conventions. But it depends. We shall see. Anything you want to add on this? Where are you sitting on this, Rob? Does this tickle your fancy then, or are you kind of so busy with other things at the moment?
I mean, I'm always busy, but I think what happened is I fell out of the series at about 13.
Right.
Because
it was good run.
Yeah, like, to be fair, like I picked up 6 and then kind of ran through, 6 hits in my head is no kind of mean feat. The reason I fell out then was because the combat system dramatically shifted into like a bit of like, there's a lot of criticism on 13 of like, it's basically on autopilot, and
right.
I think for a lot of people it was like a series low point. And then obviously like there was the online, which
still quite vibrant from what I've heard. The online, Final Fantasy
Online. But not the time for it.
Actually got to a point where they're actually pushing it. With this very game, you get a booklet saying "Go play Final Fantasy Online." So it's still a thing that they're promoting quite strongly, it would seem.
Okay, fair enough. It is something I want to get back into. My worry is the big games. And like I get like sucked into like a lot of smaller titles and things like that, which I feel would always I wouldn't have the time to kind of dedicate to it. So maybe in the future, who knows? But for now, I think I'm gonna consume by proxy of you, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think early reviews have said it takes about 55 plus hours to complete, depending if you do all the side quests and stuff as well. So I said I wanted to jump on this because I've got such a clean run up to Spider-Man 2. Unless we get any stealth drops, I've got pretty much all summer to play this, which I'm looking forward to, in and amongst other things. Do you know what the best part is, though, Rob? I get to play this game while Richie, who is the biggest Final Fantasy fan, won't be able to get his hands on it. Oh, sorry, Rick won't be able to get his hands on it for at least like 2.5 weeks. So he's over there. He'll listen to 2 of these podcasts when I get to summarize, talk about how much I'm enjoying it. And as someone who's never played one before, he's the guy who's played all of them, most likely, if not all of them. And he can't touch it. He can't do it. All he can do is walk past shops in New York, see the posters in the window, and go.
I mean, I'm sure on balance he'll get over it.
Oh, he'll still be knee deep in Legend of Zelda anyway, so I'm sure he's not. And he's on holiday, so he's got other things. But yeah, I did tease him with the game purchase. So let us know in the comments below if you'll be picking up Final Fantasy 16 and how you're enjoying it so far. Spoiler free, of course. Spoiler free. Moving on from one legendary franchise to another, we did have the news this week, courtesy of the Nintendo Direct, that the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 will be dropping on October 24th. So obviously we had it teased across the summer showcases at multiple events now. Good to see it come to Nintendo Switch, actually. It's probably one that will fare quite well on portable. I had the Metal Gear Solid Collection on PlayStation Vita. However, because of the size of the screen and the old-style controls, it doesn't make it easy to play on the Vita, if I'm honest.
I can imagine.
And however, yeah, bigger screen on the Switch, cool. But more importantly, coming to PlayStation 5, finally. Volume 1 looks fantastic. I think Rob, you, me, Richie, we're huge Metal Gear fans. We've got very fond memories from our childhood playing these well into the early hours of the night. And I think we do have scope for at some point when this collection launches, we'll do some kind of long stream, because it's been a while since we've done like a celebratory stream. And we'll just play it for as long as we can. See if we can complete it in one night like we did back in, I want to say 2005, if not earlier, whenever 2 came out. Probably earlier than that, actually. But Metal Gear Solid Collection, we've got a date for it. It's currently priced at £49.99 or $59.99. And we actually did get the news this week, which they didn't reveal at the trailer, that it comes with a few more features. So it's actually going to include the Metal Gear and Metal Gear Solid 2 Solid Snake Screen Book and Master Book, which is like a virtual comic, and also the NES version of Metal Gear the original, and then Snake's Revenge, which was one I don't think it even got a Western release, and then some of the digital videos for Metal Gear Solid 2 and the soundtrack all bundled in. So essentially, I think for the first time ever, we're getting the OG Metal Gear, kind of what started it all back on the NES, Kojima's kind of grand vision that could only be put into 2D pixel art. And then if you think about how the series has evolved every iteration to where he's at now doing Death Stranding, obviously the thing that sucks is Kojima's probably not going to be mentioned in the whole thing, which I think is a proper if we get to the credits of these games and his name is not in the credits, that is one of the worst sins in video game history. Like Konami, like, bite the bullet and just at least appreciate and honor the legacy that he did for your. Like, I don't think Konami would be around if it wasn't for Kojima. So
yeah, it's one thing to kind of obviously part ways and do different things. It's never to like try to erase his contributions of the past, right? It's
like going back and trying to take Spielberg out of Jurassic Park or something. It's like, no, you cannot do that. Like, he is genuinely the creator of this series. Because I know when Phantom Pain came out, they did a lot to basically strip his name out of all the promo art, all the box art, cover work. Obviously still in the game, but they did the best. And because this is a repackaging, it is one of them weird moral grounds where I don't want to support Konami, but at the same time, it's Metal Gear. So
there's no way I'm not playing this, but
exactly.
I'm conscious of it.
While we do wait for Metal Gear Delta, we then get all these games, I guess, which is a fantastic thing to look into. Interesting enough, though, off the back of this is the biggest news, funnily enough, to come out for Volume 1 is we always anticipated that there would be a Volume 2 by proxy of them giving it that name. Why would you do that if there wasn't going to be another one? Sources have discovered that funnily enough, when Konami have put the information up on their pre-order screen page, people have looked at the coding, and there is essentially placeholders in place for Volume 2 already. Not only that, the placeholders, they've just straight up just put the names of the games in. They haven't even tried to use like any kind of internal project names. So, according to this, the codec, funnily enough, of inside the coding of the website, says that Volume 2 will contain Metal Gear Solid 2 for Guns of the Patriots, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, and the PlayStation Portable's Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, which is revealed as one of the best games, which set up everything that went into being the Phantom Pain, essentially. Does that sound like a good Volume 2 for you, Rob?
I don't as crazy as this sounds. So number 3 is my favourite Metal Gear game, as with lots of people. but I'm more excited about Volume 2 for a couple of reasons. So, first of all, I never played any of the portable games, so that's a huge thing for me.
Peace Walk is so good. I had good times with Acid, Metal Gear Acid, which was, I think, that was the second game I bought on my PSP, but Peace Walker infinitely better.
Yeah, right. So that's a big thing for me, but perhaps the major thing is that number 4 is, I think, criminally underrated as a Metal Gear game. Obviously, like, the standard's so high, but like with 4, like we talked earlier about like the height of cinematic gaming. For me, number 4 on the PlayStation 3 kind of really took that to a level which had never been seen before. Like, if you think back to, there's a couple of really unique things in that game. So it's when there's a knife fight with Raiden and there's a vamp, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, he's back, isn't he?
Yeah, Vamp the Vampire.
Yeah.
So there's a split screen scenario there where them two are having a cinematic cutscene fight, but you have to also like fight some Metal Gears, and you can't always look at the knife fight. So like it still, that was really great. And then also like the final boss battle as well was incredible, like on the sub, and like your Liquid and Solid are fighting. So the fact that that's now unlocked from the PlayStation 3 era, because it never got ported anywhere.
That's been one of my biggest bugbears. So I bought Metal Gear 4 on the PS3, and for whatever rhyme or reason, when it was released, you remember you used to do like the Platinum games where they'd have like the silver banner on the box because it sold X amount of copies, and then you had the regular one. I had the Platinum version, and it wouldn't run on my PS3. Traded it in, got a different copy, put it in, and it just wouldn't run on my PlayStation. Like, it was software or something. But as a kid, I just thought it was broke, so I put it to a side, didn't bother with it, and then a few years later, I still wanted to play Metal Gear, so I never played it when it launched. I went back, I traded it in, and bought a non-platinum version, so just a standard basic launch title version. That worked. So there's something with my PlayStation 3 where it could not boot up the platinum disc. And then at the time, I can't remember what I was doing. I don't know whether in school or college or whatever. I got so far, I think, up until the big giant cow robots, the moo and the jump out of here. I got so far through that, and then I just stopped playing it for whatever reason. And then because it got locked on the PS3, for those who don't know, this is not playable on PlayStation 4 or 5. So it's stranded 2 generations back until, again, fingers crossed, this is a real leak that we've got from the coding, which it should be. It should be. But yeah, stuck on PlayStation 3, like many games are, is crazy. So yeah, unlocking that potential of one of the best games in the series is highly anticipated.
It's like, story-wise, it's probably one of the most important as well.
It kind of pulls it all together.
Yeah. So yeah, that's good. There's like the portable games, and also like, I feel like they could have another run at the way they resolve the story in 5. Not from changing the actual content but changing the mechanic where you played it, or where you had like repeat missions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like that would be a nice opportunity to tie it up nicely. So yeah, like, I'm really, really excited for Volume 2, and Volume 1 isn't even out yet. So yeah,
I'm looking forward to just like a resurgence of Metal Gear, because it's been a minute since we got them. I remember I moved into this house 8 years ago, and I remember playing, the first game I played, I think, on my TV was The Phantom Pain. And I remember, because I moved in the August, it was my birthday in the September, and I got the whole "it sings happy birthday to you" at the main base when you come back, because the game asks you to put your date of birth in at the beginning of the game. It's such a random Kojima thing. So there's Snake getting birthday cake and celebrations randomly in a really serious tactical espionage game. But in like 8 years on, we've not had a Metal Gear game since. But we are in this weird resurgence world where we've got Delta. So I think great thing for you and me is that my favourite game too is 3. That's getting remade as the beginning of, essentially, you'd imagine they want to go down the Resident Evil route and just, we get Delta, then we get 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then eventually by the time we hit like 2045, we'll have had them all again with no involvement from Kojima, but Konami have had to do the least minimal work. And that is the one thing that worries me about these collections, is Volume 1, they've said, is just an honest recreation. I don't think they're going to help with the control mechanics or anything. So going back and playing maybe 1 and 2 in today's world, the nostalgia might not be enough for me. I might have to wait until the sequel to Delta gets made, which is another 8+ years probably. So I kind of wish they'd put a little bit more effort into these collections to just to jazz them up a little bit. Like, my worry is if they do Peace Walker, how much effort are you going to be to scale up that PSP screen and make it fit to like a 4K 60-inch display? Or are they just going to literally upscale it and go, there you go, it's a PSP port, that's all we could do with it? It's like, is it though, or could you have done a bit more?
I mean, if anything, you feel like it would be easier just to dump it into the Fox engine, because that engine's
still gorgeous.
It's built, it's remarkable, and it's expansive in terms of functionality as well.
Yeah. There's a lot, but at least we won't have to wait long. October, not too far away now, and we'll get our hands on these. So very, very interesting stuff. One thing we will have to wait quite a long time for, seemingly, as PlayStation fans, is the Elder Scrolls 6. So we had some trailers drop for Elder Scrolls Online over the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of conversation because of all the Starfield news coming out, and naturally Bethesda won't get around to the Elder Scroll for quite some time. I think they're in this horribly long cycle where, because they took a break from Fallout to do Starfield, by proxy of that, the next if Elder Scrolls is the next game, which Todd Howard has confirmed, by the time Starfield drops later this year, they're going to support it obviously massively, because they're pegging it as the biggest game of all time they've ever made. It's not just a done and dusted out the door, we'll forget about it. It's going to be supported for many, many years to come. The next title is Elder Scrolls 6. That's going to take a long time in development, at least like 5-year minimum. I don't think we're going to get a Fallout from these guys until another decade at least, which is crazy to say out loud, because Fallout 4 was a good few years back still. However, all of this FTC question, which we spoke about a lot of detail more yesterday on XPass, is essentially the FTC questioned PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan on the future perspective deals, and one of them was Elder Scrolls 6 doesn't look like it's going to be coming to PlayStation, which this is where Microsoft, I think, sometimes they've dug themselves a hole where they're trying to make deals for Call of Duty, 10-year deals. Oh, we won't do this, we won't do that. But then the FTC turn around and ask them, well, Starfield isn't going to be on PlayStation after you acquired Bethesda, so where's the guarantee Call of Duty will be on PlayStation when that's exactly what you've done with Starfield? And I know there's like the legacy argument of, well, Call of Duty has always been on PlayStation, whereas Starfield is a new IP. But then when the FTC are looking at this from a competition, fair trading standards standpoint, as a consumer, we are one less game down because of this purchase deal. So although Activision only focus on Call of Duty predominantly, what's to say whatever they make brand new doesn't come? The Elder Scrolls 6, I think I've said all along, you don't spend this much money to then just keep, like, you want to pull people across to Xbox. So I like Phil Spencer, I think he's a good guy, but he might not be around in 10 years. So when that 10-year deal ends and the number crunches at Microsoft go, you know what, we own this IP, why are we dishing it out? Everyone who worked at the FTC is long gone, they've all retired. Jim Ryan doesn't even work at PlayStation. And everyone who cared about this deal at this moment in time, they'll not be there to influence the decision in X amount of years' time to go, you know what, Elder Scrolls, you're an Xbox exclusive. Day one XPass, come over to our side. And again, it's all business, so I understand it. But what's your history with Elder Scrolls, Rob? And do you think this is fair game to make it exclusive, or do you think it's part of that horrible side of the industry?
So I love Skyrim. Played most versions of it, if I'm going to be honest. The trouble is, Skyrim was so long ago, I can't remember much of Elder Scrolls pre-Skyrim.
Yeah. I remember a little bit of Morrowind.
Yeah.
On Richie's PC, funnily enough, years ago, and I remember watching him playing it thinking, what the hell is this game?
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
So, yeah, I've got some history with the franchise, and, like, when it comes to, like, exclusivity, it's as you were saying, like, 10 years is an impossibly long time period in gaming, and tech in general, to be honest, and, like, I think
Suicide Squad might be out by then.
Who knows? I'm waiting for that one. But as you say, like, I get the fact that, like, I get the business case for it where you want to pull people to your platform, and Xbox especially have a problem with that at the moment, right? I can see the argument there, but I feel like this little kind of statement that's came out about Elder Scrolls is a bit clumsy with everything else which is going on with, like, you know, like the FTC ruling and stuff like that. I think it's kind of like illustrative of the issues that Microsoft are having at the moment, because I don't think they anticipated, like, this big issue that they're having, which again we talk about more on XPass. I think they're just a bit kind of all over the place at the moment, and it's coming across as these statements which they may see as very kind of consequential when they make them and think, oh, it's minor, the game's ages away, we can't think about that. But it has a knock-on effect on every single other argument that's going on around this legal battle. So I'll still play it. I'll play it somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I always think PC is probably the best place to play this type of game anywhere. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the mod support for Bethesda is fantastic. Reading directly from the kind of ongoing court case where they're absolutely grilling Phil Spencer there. He's going to have a good couple of beers at the end of this weekend if it's all over. There is actually a great point where come next week, we might know the outcome of this deal. Microsoft has said that if the FTC block this, there is no way. If they can't get it through in America, their biggest market, there's no way it's going ahead. So obviously that doesn't mean they're not going to spend this $69 billion elsewhere. They might just go and go, you know what, fine, Ubisoft, get on board, we'll buy it instead. It could just turn like that. EA, come with us as well. So you could have different repercussions. But under the court ruling, he's basically asked about the Elder Scrolls 6. And to quote Phil Spencer, he said, it's not about punishing any other platform, but in order to be on Xbox, I want us to be able to bring the full complete package that we have. In regards to the Elder Scrolls 6 exclusivity, it's so far out, it's hard to understand what the platforms will even be. We're talking about a game that's 5+ years away. Microsoft expects next-gen consoles like the PS6 to release in about 2028. So the biggest takeaway from this is we kind of have a good insight into when Microsoft are expecting the next gen to launch. We might even have a follow-up from the Nintendo Switch by then if they ever get off their ass and give us some new tech. But essentially, like I said, it's so far away. It's crazy to think that they're even talking in these realms because the way out this industry is it doesn't stand still for long. And video games are just a beast unto themselves when it comes to aftercare support, DLC, reception. Like Starfield at the moment, I think it's got this great swell of buzz around it. I don't know if you caught any of the Starfield content from the showcase, Rob.
I'm fully
sold.
Switched onto it now.
The third person got me. As soon as they showed it in third person mode, I was like, I'm in for this now. Which is just says more about me probably. But yeah, it's interesting with Phil Spencer saying here, he's like, it's hard to understand what the platforms will even be. He's right, because they've got cloud on the go, they've got multiple, the Series S and Series X, and the PC platform. We don't even know how Game Pass is going to fare. Like, Microsoft might have to throw in the towel at some point, which will be horrendous for their business now, because they've committed to Game Pass so heavily. But there's always those talks behind the scenes of, is it financially viable long term? And if it costs you $200 million to make Starfield, and if it comes out and it flops, not that it looks like it's going to, but if it did, what repercussions does that have on expenditure and time investment, and how long do you keep the game? Like, we look at Fallout 76. They're still supporting that, even though I don't know anyone who plays it. No, I know it's got better. I know they've fixed it to a long degree, but you know what I mean? Video games are so crazy. And yeah, like you said, in 10 years, PlayStation 6, Xbox, whatever, who knows? But it's interesting. This court case, I know everyone's fed up of talking about it, but there's some little interesting tidbits coming out of it, like Sony specifically off the back of all that Phil Spencer was saying, is they're not going to share PS6 details with a Microsoft-owned Activision because it runs the risk of them basically seeing what tech their competition is working with, which, again, this is where video games are a totally beast unto themselves, where you've got so many deals with people behind the scenes for other things, like Minecraft, and obviously Sony San Diego make MLB The Show for the Series X.
Yeah.
And Nintendo Switch. So you are actively working on your competition's hardware, but you don't want to. So I can completely understand where like Jim Ryan's coming from. Like, you don't want to share your secrets because that's how you get a head start on the next generation. Is coming out the gate with the best piece of tech.
And let's be honest, like, the hardware enables software. It's like not the other way around. Like,
it's just mad to think that all this stuff... The funny thing as well is the amount of stuff being talked about at this court case is redacted as well. We saw Microsoft shared their sales figures, so we know what chunk of the marketplace they have. Redacted. And then we've got all these other like little snippets of emails from people. Redacted. But it is interesting to know that we've now got essentially 2028 is when the next console generation should kickstart, give or take. We know things are going on behind the scenes. But yeah, Elder Scrolls... seemingly a long way off, but I think like you, because I'm not a big Elder Scrolls fan as well, it probably doesn't hurt me as much, but I think it would still come to PlayStation.
I think it's
just because I don't. Yeah, it's one of them where because they have the legacy, it makes sense to just, if you've got a customer base there, just keep supporting it. And at the end of the day, you can sell it for full price because if you're Game Pass, if you want to go on Xbox and get it on Game Pass, that's your prerogative. If you have a PlayStation, you're a diehard PlayStation fan, still get the game. You just have to drop 70 quid for it, or by then with inflation, probably 80 quid for it.
Yeah,
and then Microsoft is still getting their chunk of the money, and so PlayStation. So everyone wins, and it's interesting that they're so much against each other and fighting, but at the end of the day, they all win in this scenario. No matter what games get put out, they all win and make money. Whether it's Call of Duty or Elder Scrolls, they're going to make money.
Yeah. But also, the actual landscape of gaming, I've got to a point where the need for a console is completely superfluous. So who on earth would pay for it on PlayStation when it could just sign up to a completely browser app-based Game Pass?
Yeah,
so
100%. We've been doing it for quite some time. But we talked more about that on XPass yesterday, so go check that out. There's a whole hour-long conversation about all the FTC rulings and Game Pass, prices going up, Xbox, Phil Spencer, etc. Speaking of selling things, though, we did have the announcement that a PS5 bundle with a 2-year worth of PlayStation Plus subscription, premium, has appeared online. So it does look like they're going to be pushing this summer for basically marketing, similar to how Xbox do with Game Pass bundled in for 2 years. And I think the value of PlayStation at the time of writing is PlayStation Plus Premium has 948 games included with it, Rob. So if you are not in this ecosystem and you go pick up this bundle, you've essentially got 2 years, nearly 1,000 games to play, all varying sizes and levels of quality, just for buying your PS5. Thoughts on this one?
Look, I'm kind of like a bit, to steal like a tagline from an article I'm looking at here, a bit like nonplussed over like the PlayStation Plus offering at the moment. It's good for people getting pulled into the ecosystem, but like for me, I'm like I still struggle to kind of extract the value out of PlayStation Plus, which I'm still subscribed to and stuff, but like there's a lot of
filler.
Yeah, for lack of a better word.
And that's the same with Game Pass, though, isn't it? And Netflix and Apple TV. Like, that's unfortunately the content subscription-based world we live in, is that to make the proposition look valuable, you need 101 things. Whereas actually the truth is people probably only check out the top 5%. That's decent. It gets marketed. It's got the quality behind it. PlayStation Plus, I was saying to Richie last week, I've resubscribed for another year because they did a summer sale. So I actually got the whole year for 75 quid.
Okay.
So I thought, you know what, divide that by 12 months, that actually works out quite beneficial for even if it's just the 1 or 2 decent games that go in day one. Like if Helldivers goes in day one in November, that's essentially a £50 maybe give or take title that I would have probably bought anyway. So I've made back nearly 2/3 of my 75 quid in one game over the next year. So I think, like we said with Game Pass, even if you're just interested in one title that year, so for example Starfield for me this year, Game Pass has almost paid itself off because Starfield would have been a £70 purchase anyway. So I'm already getting quite close to that time frame. But it's interesting that they're marketing it because Sony have traditionally kept the subscriptions separate and they've went all in on just promoting like a game like a Spider-Man bundle or a God of War bundle. And it's interesting that they've got this tact surprisingly rolling out. So
do you feel like we'll see Microsoft, like the Microsoft Play with All Access, which like was hit very, very well, and they're thinking, you know, we want a bit of that.
How can we match that? Yeah, because again, not everyone wants like the big. I know they do like Gran Turismo bundles, and I don't know about you, but in the past I've definitely ended up with a bundle, and there's always one game out of 3 that you just don't play. I think when I got my PS2, I got Red Faction, Star Wars Starfighter, and the third game, I can't remember what it was, but I didn't play it because it was just I didn't want it. It was just bundled in through Electronics Boutique or something, and it just sat there, and then eventually we ended up trading it in. So
what the hell was that? Yeah,
there was a third game that it'll probably been like a Japanese part of something that you just had no interest in.
Yeah, because mine was Red Faction, Dynasty Warriors 2. I can't remember now, but yeah, there was that game.
They were that bad that we just don't even remember them to this day. So it's interesting take, and we'll see more about that. 2 final quick ones to round out the week as well. Ghost of Tsushima movie is in heavy development apparently, so absolutely fantastic game, the franchise, and the way PlayStation have benefited from The Last of Us and other upcoming shows like the Twisted Metal one, which looks atrociously bad. PlayStation productions are still ramping up, and the one saving grace I see in Ghost of Tsushima is we don't really get many, I think, Japanese samurai-inspired movies, really. We get them like every other decade with The Last Samurai, and then what was the Ronin movie that came out last year? I can't remember it.
But
But either way, and then this one is tied in with John Wick director as well, essentially. So Chad Stahelski. The trick is we've got great material. This is reading from his quote. We've got great material. We know we have great material. It's about how palpable in any platform we can make this fantastic into a 2.5-hour movie. Make it satisfying. Leave it to the open world to expand further. That's the real challenge. And I have every faith. When this was announced, I hadn't seen John Wick. I've since seen the first 3 back to back to back. Did want to go see 4 in the cinema, but we had a child instead, so we've not been able to get away. However, John Wick director paired with the Ghost of Tsushima franchise for me is like that's top tier, like planning and recruitment and lining getting your ducks in a row for a stellar production. And the fact it's a movie and not a TV series, I think bodes quite well for its production value. I think there's decisions that need to be made of how will this best fare, and I think for the visual fidelity and art style that Ghost of Tsushima has, I think a movie is the right choice to just show the scope and the scale of how awesome this adventure could be.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think with a lot of movie adaptations of game franchises, they go super shallow on the kind of the narrative because they think, oh well, it's already baked in, we'll just like slap its name on it and stuff like that. But with this director, like he somehow took a story of a man getting revenge for his dog dying into this massive universe of like everything, right? So I have every faith that like the content will be there.
Should be fantastic. And speaking of John Wick as well, of course, the concierge in that, played by the fantastic Lance Reddick, brings us to our final story of the week. We know Lance Reddick passed away very untimely a few weeks ago, and the last story of the week is developers Guerrilla Games and their fantastic titles Horizon Forbidden West recently in the Burning Shores DLC. They've added a memoriam into the game for Lance Reddick as well, so as you're exploring the new area of the game, there's essentially like a virtual, when you scan using Aloy's headpiece, there's like a virtual memorial of his name in the game, and it shows up with loads of beautiful flowers and stuff and a very scenic part. But I thought I just wanted to add that in there because it ties in, and I remember watching John Wick actually, and we were so far into it, and I remember saying to my wife, like, oh, look, it's the guy. And she doesn't know, because she hasn't played Horizon Forbidden West. But for me, I was like, I know he was in The Wire, but I'd never watched The Wire. And seeing him, like, in John Wick is, like, it was a small character. At the beginning in my head, I'm like, he's going to play a more predominant role as the series goes on. And obviously, he passed away just as the new movie came out, essentially. So he didn't even get to see the kind of benefits of that, unfortunately. But terrific guy, amazing accent. And I'm very intrigued to see where his input into the Horizon series goes, because he was a main part of both the first and the second game. So interesting future for the series on that one. But yeah, rest in peace, Lance Reddick. And you want to check out his memorial, it's in Horizon Forbidden West now. But that does bring us to the end of this week's show. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in, listening, watching, however you consume our content. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you're kept in the loop with all the great things we do here. Just like this show, just like XPass, just like our monthly Lunar Listening Amazon Lunar podcast, our live streams, our watch-alongs, and much, much more. We do have a very vibrant Discord as well. So if you are one of those chatty video game folks who wants to get together with a community of like-minded gamers, the link is in the description below. Go check that one out. And of course, follow us on all of our socials at Helix Plays Games. My name's been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And we've been talking the PS. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. And remember, play whatever makes you the happiest. Take care, goodbye, enjoy the rest of your flight, Rick. You'll definitely.
Boom.